Hey everyone, it's Kevin. Welcome back to the channel. So today is a really fun video because I'm going to be doing a project breakdown. This is a format that I haven't done in almost a year, which is kind of nuts because when I look back when I started this channel, that was actually my main format. I really missed that format. It really felt familiar to me, and I just figured it would be really nice to walk you through one project that I did recently and then just give an update on this channel and what I've been working on. So I did put out a video a few days ago about should you stop creating, and obviously that title is very hyperbolic, but it was something that I was subconsciously struggling with because we have new technology, we have generative AI, and I'm seeing it everywhere, especially on social media industry. Just honestly, you can't really look away because it's going to be somewhere around you. With that, it brought into a lot of questions of how I create now, why I create. It never really made me want to stop creating. You know, I was always intrigued by, okay, where is this gonna go? But because it can create something so instantly, there's a lot of questions that make you crippled about your own process. And that's partially why things have felt a little bit slower in terms of uploads or output in my personal work lately. From that video, the summary is that I'm not going to stop creating. I think there's a lot of value in human innovation and, you know, what you can create. Things are going to look different, especially next year, within the next 6 months, next year, of how we create things. But I don't think that it should ever dampen or, you know, destroy your desire to create, because I think that's important. Regardless of what medium you use, you should always just want to keep creating, because especially if that's a part of you, especially if that's pretty foundational, I think that it's important to keep going. So now I feel like I'm getting into a rhythm of creating again, finding balance between all of my endeavors and exactly what my goals are. So I'm pretty excited about creating more videos and posting more on the channel within the next couple of months. So with that said, I'm going to talk about this car ride scene breakdown, and then I'm going to talk about some updates and what I've been working on at the end of the video. So this was a really nice process of returning back to like actually creating a scene. I hadn't created a full-fledged scene in a very long time. I've done a lot of experiments, a lot of objects, but I really wanted to get back to creating scenes because for me, that actually helps me learn more about my workflow and how I can improve it. So this scene was kind of bridging off this idea that I really love theme parks. So if you've seen any of my other work, I love creating, like I've recreated the Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. It's a small world, and I just love things that have kinetic energy. Now, I've never really thought of myself as like an engineer, but I've always been obsessed with like things that are moving inside of a scene. Like I always love the idea of these like ride vehicles going through an attraction and taking people on an experience. So that's always been my interest in terms of like theme parks. I just love that idea. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I just love seeing those vehicles moving. And I wanted to represent that here in this scene because most recently I posted a scene of the Haunted Mansion where I created my own little ride vehicle generator, which was actually a fun experiment. I've been also trying to get back into geometry nodes as well, because I feel like that's a feature of Blender that I sorely need to I want to get better at. But that was trying to take whatever I created there and then injecting it into this scene. So this entire piece revolved around these car ride vehicles. Also wanted to examine my process because up until this point, everything that I've done in Blender is kind of like a mixture of 2D and 3D. So obviously the 2D elements being drawn with grease pencil and then the 3D elements just being meshes or components in Blender. But obviously working with that workflow, I've realized the pros and cons of that combination, and I do love the magical feeling that you get when you see that combination of the two. It just looks like it's visually so different to me that I love the idea of it looking like a 2D illustration, but then seeing it come alive like a storybook. That's always been the reason why I'm so interested in that workflow. But here, I really wanted to experiment with how grease pencil could integrate in a way that lent itself more towards a specific direction. So what I mean by is, I don't think that the workflow itself ever locked me in a specific aesthetic, but I do feel like there were some limitations there. And I think a lot of it was with grease pencil, it's not as easy to actually like texture them like you can, you know, with a shader or a mesh. You can't really texture paint those, but I've been able to create something that allows me to change my grease pencil strokes into meshes, which is really exciting. So you can just draw and convert it into a mesh, and then I can just apply shaders on top of it, which made the process of this scene a lot easier. So here I was experimenting a lot with, like I mentioned, geometry nodes, but particles. So particles were such a big thing here, especially for all the foliage. I started off with the landscape with the grass. So this was just working with just a regular particle emitter, but then I used geometry nodes in order to instance the different kinds of flowers onto the grass. And I was able to create those objects using that grease pencil to mesh method. You know, before, if I were to create these flowers, I would have to model them and it would take forever. But being able to just like simply draw strokes, convert them into meshes, and then just instance them along these landscape, the grass meshes, it just made it so much easier. And it was actually fun because it felt very intuitive. Another thing is that if you were to just instance grease pencil strokes in this way, I feel like, and I don't know, maybe this is, you know, something I need to do more research on, but the performance of it is a lot slower than if you were just to instance meshes. So I found that in just converting those grease pencil strokes into meshes, it made this process a lot easier for me, and it wasn't as intensive when rendering the scene or even just navigating around it. So I instanced a couple of different flowers here. I'm not familiar with these names. I've just looked at reference images, so excuse me if, you know, I don't know. But yeah, so like these long flowers, these daisies, these like all different kinds. I just wanted a variation in height and a variation in structure. And I really liked how it turned out. You know, I loved the natural placing of all the particles of all the flowers onto the grass. I built out the scene. So I have, you know, some rocks. I have this bridge structurally to, again, support the main focal piece, which was the ride vehicles. I initially thought of creating something a bit more detailed. So I wanted to do like this entire ride path going through the entire scene, like not in just a linear way, but like weaving through the trees and the grass. But I was like, okay, I think it's going to be too much. And I already have the generator for the vehicles, but I wanted to focus on everything outside of the scene. So like the environments around it. Because I was able to create all these flowers with grease pencil and then convert it to a mesh, the shading that I used here was like a watercolor-like shader that, if you want to see how that was made, it's the same one that I used in this 2D, 3D stylized landscape with geometry nodes tutorial. Feel free to check it out. So other than the car and the landscape, I also applied the same technique onto the trees. So a lot of the trees, I really wanted them to feel detailed with lots of different colors. So I have a lot of the roses onto the trees and in the bushes. They're all just very different flowers, I guess. But yeah, I just try to pick a variety of different colors because I really wanted to make it feel rich with a lot of depth. And to accompany all of those flowers, I used a lot of grease pencil strokes. So a lot of the default brushes that you can find in the grease pencil brush pack. Side note, I know a lot of people are having issues using these grease pencil brushes and like the more recent versions of Blender. I highly urge you to check out Pepe Schoolan because they are the original creators of those brushes, and honestly, I've been using them ever since. I think they offered it as like a free add-on. So, and they've been super reliable and honestly so great. So I'll leave a link below to their channel where you can learn how to install those brushes for more recent versions of Blender and then use them in your own artwork. Now, to finish this off, I added a lot of butterflies. A lot of these assets I kind of just reused from other seeds like my jungle treehouse, and then I also added some light rays and then particles to give it a really nice ambient feeling. I really wanted to focus on the warmth that you feel from like a sunny day. So I really wanted to push that in this scene here. And then to finish it off, I did add a lot of compositing to highlight a lot of the edges in the shader. So again, if you want to see how I did that, you can check out my stylized landscape tutorial where I talk more about that. And that is towards the end of the video. So another reason why this year kind of felt slow for me in terms of uploads was that I was able to get this contract opportunity with Walt Disney Imagineering, which was super exciting. Now, if you've been following my channel, you'll know that I actually got laid off from Imagineering, which ended up prompting me to start this channel, which is really funny. And then I've returned in varying capacities since. But this time around, someone from there reached out to work on this really exciting project, and this is something that I'd always wanted to do, so I was really happy about it. But the timeline for what they were working with was really short, so I think it was about like 5 to 6 months to be able to do, you know, what they wanted to do, and they also had a deadline that they were working towards. So it took up a lot more time than I initially thought it was going to take, but I wanted to make sure that I was going to give it my all because I really wanted to, I just wanted to do well at the project. So that was a big thing. And then also in that project, I didn't actually use Blender a lot. Blender 3D had been my main creative program for the past few years now, and you know, it's an awesome program, but here I didn't really use it that much. I did use it for like concepting and visualization, but I mainly used 2D programs that I was already familiar with. And when it comes to Blender, I don't know what it is. I've been using it for a while, but when I've stepped away from Blender for a period of time, I always find it's really hard to get back into it, and I feel like I'm like, oh gosh, like where is everything? And it's not that Blender is hard to use, or at least I don't think it's like hard to use or to pick up, but I do feel like for some reason for me, I feel like I need to warm up when it comes to actually creating in Blender. Another thing was that last year, this is when a lot of stuff started to change for me, because that's when I picked up 3D printing, but then I opened my shop, which is something that I'd always wanted to do. I was really happy when I opened my shop. Side note, I did have a shop like 6 years ago. I had my own handmade accessories brand. And one of my very first videos on this channel is actually a bracelet tutorial, because that's what I was creating for the shop. But I eventually had to close that down because it just got a lot. And then there were like some legal issues there. It was a whole thing, but I'll probably make a video on that another time. But I was really happy to restart my shop in a different way, because like I said, I've always wanted to have something of my own where I could sell things that I've made. And it was like a really exciting endeavor. And the main product that I was selling there were these Kera cards, you know, these fantasy inspired 3D printed cards. Now, I've made a few videos on this, but when I started 3D printing, one of the things that I really loved about it was this feature that allows you to print your 2D art in a way that it looks like a tablet. And this is possible through a program called Forge. And I do feel like Bamboo did release something on Maker recently that kind of gives you a very similar look. But I started with Forge, and it has been such an amazing process for me because I love being able to see my artwork in this way. So how it started out was, you know, I illustrate a 2D piece, and then I'm able to take that into Forge, and then I can actually specify exactly how it's going to look as a 3D print within that program and what filaments I'm going to be using. And this was really perfect for the style I was going for, because it allowed me to take some artwork and then work with a limited color palette, which is what I love to do. And then I was able to create these. So right now I've created about 7 out of 12 cards. And like I mentioned, they're inspired by the classes of Final Fantasy. I love Final Fantasy, the games in general. Right now I still play 14. I mean, I haven't played it in a while. My house is trying to get demolished, but I mean, I'm subbed to it. But I do, you know, love those games, and I love the whole fantasy aesthetic. So I thought it would be really cool to represent them as like these tarot, like mystical like cards. And this has been such a fun project for me. But again, I didn't have to use Blender for this. I was just mainly illustrating in Procreate. So I think a lot of, you know, the project earlier this year and having to use Procreate, I think I had stepped away from Blender for a period of time, a pretty significant period of time. So like going from doing project videos to like not really having to do them, it was kind of a shift for me, and really trying to get back, find my creative workflow. It took a little bit, but I feel like I'm kind of in a good rhythm now where I'm starting to rediscover what that is again. So I never really stopped my interest in Blender. You know, it's always been such a fun program to be able to create anything. But when I started with it, I didn't imagine creating animations or films. Like, that wasn't my main goal with Blender. I think I just wanted to work in a different medium that felt immersive or allowed me to explore environments, and that was it. Blender was it. For me, I really want to use Blender to be able to do new things. Like I love using Blender for 3D printing. I love using Blender to create these 2D, 3D scenes that are almost like magical pages in a storybook. But where I'm hoping to take a lot of that is to more interactive projects. So like trying to take a lot of the stuff that I create with Blender to the web or making games out of it. There's so much that you could do with this program that I feel like it's just, I can't believe it's free because it's so versatile for any kind of use or whatever you're trying to do with it. I want to be able to take whatever I learn with Blender now and be able to, you know, take that to very different products and experiences that, you know, I hope to put on my shop soon, or just, you know, as like fun experiments that I can make. So in an effort not to really let go of any kind of art, I did a few experiments this year. So not really full-fledged scenes. And I think the first few ones were like these geometry node flowers and these tree experiments. So I really wanted to get better at geometry nodes because, you know, nodes are something that I've used since I started Blender. I can't believe. Yeah, and I remember they just got released when they got released, like they actually made their first debut, and now it's like a pretty essential component to like any kind of workflow in Blender. But for me, yeah, I've always had issues trying to understand how it fits into my artwork. You know, I love geonodes, but I think for me, I just want to be able to like mentally think of it as something like seamless. And I feel like I'm starting to get there, which is really exciting, which is nuts because like that's like 5 years later. But I wanted to be able to do more experiments to understand exactly how nodes can work and be more efficient for me and my creative workflow. In terms of stylization, I created these slimes and I actually made a tutorial on this shading, and you know, this is the same shading that I use in the stylized landscape, but I really wanted to experiment with something new. Other experiments I did were this goldfish. So this was more another experiment with geometry nodes, and I just wanted to see how I could manipulate a mesh in 3D in a way that felt kind of like organic. And I also created this crystal castle and this heart container. So the crystal castle piece was because I just wanted to experiment with a different color palette. I think what's really central to my work is just the feeling that I want to evoke, kind of cozy and colorful and bright and warm. And I think for this, I wanted to try a cooler palette this time around. And then I took that and then also created this heart container coaster mesh. So these are actually inspired by the Ocarina of Time. So I really liked the aesthetic that I got from the Crystal Castle and tried to push it a little bit further in that piece. And then I really liked the shape of the art containers, so I actually made them into 3D printed coasters. So I really liked being able to transition from like a digital piece and then, you know, translating that into a 3D printed piece. So that was actually really fun to try. Another experiment I did were these mesh vases. So actually I did a video on this, so if you want to check that out, I'll put another link below, but it was just creating a grease pencil to mesh using geometry nodes. Now this is still very powerful. I think being able to do that capability through geonodes, it's just that I think as far as this implementation goes, it's not very intuitive in the way that I've set it up. Like you can't really just like draw anywhere. It doesn't feel like it's easy. So I really wanted to refine that, and that's what I was able to do in my car ride scene. Like after this, I felt like I took a very large break from creating, and then just to get back into it and just remember what that workflow was, I created this piece based off a mill from Nier. If you know, that's a video game published by Square Enix, and I absolutely love that video game. primarily because I love the soundtrack. It's, I think, one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time, right up there with Chrono Trigger. But I really love this character and I love that world, and I wanted to see if I could do something a little bit different from what I had usually done in Blender, and I really liked how this one turned out. Now, to keep going with creating, I did create a few other scenes, like this pumpkin scene for Halloween. This was the most scene heavy. I really wanted to push what I had learned in terms of like geometry nodes and shading techniques, and incorporate that with a lot of the grease pencil techniques that I had in my most recent pieces. And then I also did this ride generator. So this was probably my most exciting like geometry nodes experiment up until that point, because I really, like I said, I love theme parks. I love being able to see the ride vehicles go by. So seeing these dune buggies travel along the path, that was really fun. And I tend to do this. I usually like experiment with pieces I've already made in the past and then I just kind of recomposite them. And honestly, for me, I think that's the best way to learn. Like anytime I finish a piece, I always have trouble. Well, one, I have trouble finishing it, but then I also feel like pieces are never done because you can always return back to it. I do want to be able to like, you know, put my foot down and say like, this is done, but I always like revisiting my pieces and improving upon them. So another scene that I've been working on, and I haven't really exported it because I'm still kind of working on it, but it was actually made for Halloween and that's obviously gone. But I wanted to make like this theme of creating dark ride art central to my aesthetic. So like theme park core, I guess, I don't know. But I wanted to be able to take the Little Maxwell idea and imagine like what my own dark ride looked like based on that property. And I wanted to be able to create like a series of scenes that, you know, this ride vehicle would go through. I do want to do a video dedicated to exactly what that property is about and what the idea is about, but pretty much I started off with this like Halloween scene in, you know, the outside with these pumpkins and Little Maxwell there, and I have the ride vehicle going through. So this is actually what started that idea of trying to do like theme park art, and I really liked how this turned out, but I do want to refine it a little bit. It's obviously unfinished, but there was a lot that went into this scene and I was really happy. I mean, I'm happy with how it's looking so far, but yeah, I'm really hoping to finish it soon. Anyways, that was it for this video and this update and the scene breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm really hoping to upload a lot more in the next coming weeks. So if there's anything that you'd like to see from me or hear from me, you know, please let me know in the comments. I do have a few more 3D printing videos coming out and, you know, a few experiments that I'm working on. So I hope you guys look forward to that. Anyways, thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.